able, please stand for the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item 4 is tonight's adoption of agenda. Would someone like to make a motion to adopt tonight's agenda?
I will make a motion to adopt tonight's agenda.
Thank you. A second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Call to the public. I do not see any note cards. Was there anyone that wanted to speak on anything that's not on the agenda this evening? All right, then we will just move right along to item 6A, which is the Yavapai County Education Foundation grant update. All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Chino Valley School District Governing Board. I'm Mike Elligood. I've been here before. I'm sort of an old friend, I think, of Chino Valley School District. And it's my pleasure to be here again. The last time we were here, I talked about Josh Steinberg and his wonderful woodworking shop that we were able to sponsor a little bit for, and I mentioned an article that was going to feature in Prescott Living magazine. I have the printed copy here, and I'm going to leave that with you, Madam Chair. With me here this evening is our treasurer at the Yavapai County Education Foundation, Tim Carter, whom you all know, and also Kelly Burns. Kelly, you live here in Chino, don't you? Paul. Better name. And I also brought my wife along to kind of keep track of things. But tonight we have 2 awardees from a very interesting biology department. And we're here to hear what they're going to do with all the money we sent.
All right.
Please tell us.
All right. Well, I am Rita Johnson, and this is Julie Bias. We teach science at Chino Valley High School, and we are both recipients of a grant from the Yavapai County Education Foundation. So we are going to give just a short presentation of what we have used the funds for, and I will let Julie go first.
So out of the funds, I was able to purchase a dissecting scope for student use in the classroom. And this will be used for both my biology and anatomy students. We got some other little items I packed in too. But with a dissecting scope, what you're able to do is take the scope and put 3-dimensional objects underneath it. So the way that this is set up, it's different than a compound scope. So any of your 3-dimensional objects, you can slide right here. So think of like plant seeds, teeth, bones, twigs, anything that you want to slide underneath that you can't cut into a super thin layer. That's what the dissecting scopes would be used for. So I was able to purchase one of those. And then I also was able to purchase 2 kits that are to be used in the classroom. One of them is for classification purposes. So the students, they'll have cards, and there's several groups worth of cards. I just brought one sample here. But they go through and looking at the organisms in the samples, they're able to classify using dichotomous keys. So think of keys where it's either this or that, and then you work your way down and it tells you which selection to go to, and you go to the next item. And so for students trying to classify and figure out based on examples of what they have to look at, then coming up with their actual answers, categorizing, classifying, all science skills that we'll be using. And then another kit that I did not bring tonight because it has chemicals inside of it. It's for anatomy. And what they're doing is detecting the presence of amino acids. So any of the amino acids that would be on a soft surface, so cotton, paper, cardboard, and then you would spray the chemical on top of it and it'll show your fingerprints. By adding heat, it'll turn to a purple color. And so we're looking at the presence of amino acids, but also using it with a real world practicality, such as law enforcement forensics. So it gives them a slightly different avenue for it. And then I'll let you know.
All right, one of the items that I was able to purchase is a 4x8, as in feet, periodic table of the elements. The one that's currently in our classroom is possibly even before John's time. There's a
I bought
little
it.
note at the
I bought
corner
it.
that says elements 110, 113 have not yet been discovered. And they were discovered in 2003, I believe. So this is at least 20 years old. So over the years, people have written in the ones that have been discovered since then. So we're getting updated this, plus it has electron configurations, which is nice because then the kids have one less reference sheet that they can look at because everything is right up there on the board in front of them. So that's going to be really nice to get that put up. The other thing we've got is I've got a couple of, they're called demo-a-days, one for earth science and one for chemistry. And these are really short, maybe 5 to 10 minute demonstrations of whatever our topic of the day is. And it gets the kids involved in what we're going to do. It's a lot of hands-on thing. And then a few of them we can adapt into longer labs. In fact, one of them for the earth science we're using tomorrow as a lab. They're going to measure how land and water heat up at different rates. So these are really, really good for quick demonstrations or even just to lengthen out the lab demonstration and do like a whole lab for the class. And then one other thing I was able to get, and this one, these are called POGIL activities, and they are self-guided. They have objectives. They've got different topics. So one of the things I'm going to use these for is in our benchmark testing. We get back a report that says, here's what the kids need to work on. And one of them seems to be repeatedly data interpretation, graphs and tables. So I can go through here and say, okay, one of the things that tends to trip them up is the earth science kids maybe ask a question that has to do with physics. And they're like, I have no idea what this is about. But if I can get them focused on this is a graph and here's how we can go through what it's telling us. And there's all kinds of different examples in here we can use. So I really appreciate it. This is going to really enhance what the kids can do in our class. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes,
Anyone on
very much.
my left have any questions for them?
No, I think it's just tremendous.
Absolutely.
Hard to believe that periodic table is missing 3 elements.
Well, it's missing more than 3, but those were the ones that said they had not yet been discovered. There was, I think, 5 more that they hadn't named yet, even when that one was printed. So this will be nice.
With
Yeah.
the written in ones.
Yeah, with the written in ones with little note cards taped on over them and things.
Well, see, what I'm waiting for is an interactive elementary table where you can actually push on the element and it'll show you the electrons and the atoms with the
Yes,
number of electrons
exactly.
and protons spinning around.
Yes, yeah,
That's next generation.
there you go.
Got to donate a little bit
Right now,
more.
right now we're happy with one on the wall.
I'll have to wait till next year's donations come in and we'll see.
There you go.
That's
All right.
cool stuff.
Ladies?
Thanks.
I like to have a hands-on learning.
Yes,
Some children don't get learning from a textbook.
right,
They
exactly
like,
right.
they have to do with their hands.
And
I
even
like
if we then go on into part of the lesson, as long as they've already seen it, that makes that connection for them. Exactly.
Awesome.
Well, once again, thanks to the Yavapai County Education Foundation to fund your grant requests. Congratulations.
Uh-huh.
Thank you. All right, item 6B is our Chino Valley High School CTE update.
All right. Good evening, members of the board, Madam President. I have one extra piece here that I'm going to pass around to you all. It's nothing very official of any sorts, but has information on there that could be good for you all. Just to kind of know our process and what we do. Might be two of them. Good evening. For those who don't know, I'm Brian Pareto, Assistant Principal and CTE Director at Chino Valley High School. And I get the privilege and the honor of serving as the Career and Technical Education Director. Just as a brief reminder, just because sometimes we come across the information, sometimes we don't. The CTE programs are really specifically designed to help introduce our kids to career fields. And in these classes, whether they are automotive, whether it's a bioscience class, a culinary class, sports medicine, or whichever it might be. There's a couple elements to them that are very important, and they mandate that the kids spend a lot of time in the laboratory. So they try to say 51% of the classroom time should be spent in the laboratory setting. So whether it's a welding shop, culinary kitchen, in Mr. Bryan's bioscience lab, it must be hands-on in that area somehow, some way for 51% of the time. The other piece that the kids are getting with that technical skill is the academic knowledge. So they're getting a lot of background knowledge of the careers, the career field itself. And together, these are helping build the kids a resume so that they are ready to enter into entry-level jobs in the career field that are technically motivated and have a high degree of technical skill associated with it. So that's kind of a broad stroke overview of what CTE is. And I just want to talk briefly about the pathway we take and get our kids into the CTE programming. Begins in 9th grade. We do have this year and moving into this upcoming year as well, that the career exploration class for 9th graders is going to be a mandatory class for them to take. They still will have another option to choose an elective that they wish, but we find it very important for them to get in here. One of the first things they're working on is exploring the various occupation fields, and that's anything from health, architecture and engineering, transportation, it could be hospitality, but they have an opportunity to explore these career fields, and then they zero in and they start looking at specific jobs and career fields within those occupations to kind of figure out where they might want to go in life. They also look at applying for jobs. They go through job searches. That's my phone. I apologize. It was my daughter, just saying. So they're looking at jobs, right? They're looking at qualifications to get into some of these jobs. And during this time frame of looking at jobs within corporations, they start developing their first resume. So it's a template, but they start building their first resume. They get their first taste of what a resume, what the elements are within it. Another thing they look at a lot of is colleges, universities, and technical colleges. Look at the degrees within them, certificated programs, how to pay for college, entrance requirements. So they start to get a good sense of the differences between maybe a technical college and just a regular college. So they explore those items quite a bit. They look at the military to some degree as well. They'll look at the different branches of the military and the responsibilities and how they feel for our country. And they'll talk about the jobs within those as well. Probably is a little bit lesser of a focus there, but we usually get some speakers to come in and have a chance to talk to the kids. Look at high school graduation requirements because these kids need to make sure they graduate from high school. Otherwise, kind of taking away the potential of the careers that they could be getting in the future if they're not graduating from high school. And then they meet with their counselors. And at that point, they're starting to choose the pathways they're going to go in high school, right? Are they going to jump into Honors Academy? Are they going to take a lot of CTE classes? Are they going to take general education classes for just regular high school graduation? And oftentimes it's a combination of all. You got kids taking CTE classes along with honors, or maybe it's just honors classes alone, CTE and general ed. So we get kids coming in with a lot of different opportunities with where they want to go. But it's important they at least start kind of choosing, I'm going to go down the career path, or they're going to go down this high academic side of things. We have a good amount of kids who they're either going to choose CTE solely, or they're going to choose the high academic Honors Academy stuff. And we do have some kids who choose in the middle, but I would say it's a good blend of it all. But in my opinion, without looking at numbers, I think you got a high division of kids who are either doing just CTE or just Honors Academy. Either way, it's good. So then they launch into our CTE programs, and this is where the fun starts to happen with the classes. Each of the programs are either 2 or 3 year programs. As we said before, students can still enroll into the Honors Academy programs. And through the rest of the programming, this is where the resume starts to shine, to start to get this opportunity I'm in high school, I don't have any formal jobs, but through these CTE programs, they can really have a resume that looks outstanding moving into college or looking to get into their first jobs at a high school. A lot of the teachers, advisors, I should say, are creating service opportunities for them or volunteer work for them. They have leadership opportunities within the CTSOs, whether they are the president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, or members at large, as agriculture usually does. Kids, so they get leadership, they get some volunteer experience. Now, the kids who are, staying with their technical skills and working on their academic knowledge, chances are they're going to pass those certification exams that they're taking. So that's exciting to have that on top of it all. Some of these classes are earning college credits, some are not. And everything we have, I think 3 of our 6 programs are offering college credits within them. That's on our campus. And then everything with Yavapai College and Mountain Institute, obviously those are all Yavapai College credit classes there. As we said before, they're getting technical hands-on skills developed, and they're in the labs working often, and their teachers are doing a great job providing them real-world learning experiences. And the last part that's a little bit more fun, but still puts them in a kind of an intense performance situation is their competitive events that they get to attend at the state competitions or region competitions. So we often will tell the kids right there with, you need to put that event or you need to put that competition on your resume just because it shows that you're working under pressure. You're having to achieve a high level. And that's going to be no different than when you get to work. You have to perform your absolute best. So you put all those elements into kids' resume coming out of high school, and it's not so boring. It's not so drab. And the kid has something they can lean on. So it's really exciting. And this is where I'm going to talk about kids who've kind of gone through our program. I've got, I don't know, probably 20 to 30 kids on there, I hope, but not going through all of them. But I just want to highlight some that are some recent graduates, further graduates who graduated a ways out. But these are all kids who have gone through our programs in one way or the other. So keep going. I'm going to jump to another slide. I'm going to be jumping all over. One more for me, please. Thank you. I'm going to talk about some kids from last year. Okay, the kid on top, Chloe Polachek. She completed the CNA program, earned her certification. But as her 11th grade year and 12th grade year, she was taking a lot of classes with Yavapai College through their AJEX, that's their general education classes. And those are classes that we at the high school are able to pay for. And so when I seen her at, I don't know if it was soccer or basketball, she was excited. She didn't take classes over the summer, she just worked. But she only took classes into her first semester of her first college year, and she had her AA degree completed. So that's an exciting piece right there. Same time, she was able to apply and get admitted into the RN program for the spring of 23. And this is a kid who just graduated this spring. So that's an exciting piece for her. Fernando Soto, he finished our sports medicine program on campus. His senior year, he took a fire science program as well. So he had 2 years of sports medicine and 1 year of fire science altogether. And it was Mountain Institute. It was their first cohort of kids they had for fire science. And this is a young man who had a chance to get into it. Just real quick about sports medicine. We call it sports medicine. They do a lot of rehabilitative things. We talk a lot about sports, but it's really about kind of applying emergency medical treatment to someone who gets injured, who breaks the leg, who has a major gash in their arm and they're bleeding profusely. So it's a lot of emergency medical treatment stuff right there. And so it fits in great with the fire science stuff. He finished his first year there with them. Mountain Institute said this kid did great. They scholarshiped him to get into a second semester of classes, which finished, I think, all the fire classes that YC offers. And they also chose to scholarship him to pay for his EMT classes for this semester right here. So that's an exciting one right there for this young man. Julio Brown graduated as well. He was an ag kid. He was a big welder. He's one of our kids who really worked a whole lot on our farm for us. And yeah, I got into the National Guard. He's working as a mechanic and maintenance in there. So he's excited there. If you could. His counterpart, Lathan, another young man that worked at the farm for us profusely, got on the pipeline with his dad. And before I knew it, he was driving around town. He had a nice Dodge dually pickup. And then he said he had himself I think he said a 35-foot trailer that he was towing back to somewhere in Nevada to go work some more pipelines somewhere. So, and the kid's 19 years old. Taylor Miller was in culinary arts, just graduated, and just learned that he got enlisted with the Navy, and he's working as a culinary specialist for his MO right there. And really, there's so much on here. We have Ms. Daniels' kids are on here. We have kids who I think we have Miss Cox. I think your son is up here somewhere as well.
Soon to be daughter-in-law's right
And soon to be daughter-in-law's up there as well. Yes. Let's go back to one of the very first slides, if you will. I'm just going to talk about some of our current kids right now. Right there is good. So this listing of kids are, these kids are involved in 2 or 3 CTE programs here on our campus. So they're really looking to expand. They're really career-minded. But as I'm looking at this list, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just off the top of my head, like 6 or 7 of these kids are high academic kids who are probably in our Honors Academy classes as well. And yet they're here still taking at least 2 of our CTE programs right there. And so this is our next group of kids who are going to fit into the other slides that we see down the road that are 2000. So in 5 years from now, hopefully we can look back on these kids and say, all right, this kid now completed all the bioscience, he's agri-science, and now she's working for National Forest, and she's has a great career there. Mason Evans down there, you know, hopefully he's an auto mechanic somewhere, killing it with his own company as well. So there's just a lot to highlight and a lot to be said about the kids who are investing themselves academically with Yavapai College, whether it's CTE only or also with our CTE class, academic honors classes as well. It's just kind of an exciting time to kind of look back and reflect on how many kids we have on there and all the great things that they're doing. So that's my presentation. Just kind of want to give you a quick snapshot of what it looks like for a kid jumping into 9th grade into career exploration classes and launching into our CTE programming, and just some of the great opportunities that come about and great outcomes. So, yes.
Quick question, if I could. This class is first semester, 9th grade, so they hit this the first year in high school?
The career exploration, yes, it's a full year course.
Oh, full year, okay,
Yes.
so they're all getting a freshman year.
They are.
Great.
Yes, yes.
I think it's wonderful. Thank you so much for everything that you've done for these kids, well, and the schools and
schools.
everyone else, but it's just amazing that these kids are graduating from high school and they've got it made.
You know, the mission for the school and the district for so long is to be, let's get these kids ready for the careers and get them ready for the colleges right there. And, you know, this was just off of maybe a 15 conversation with Mrs. Daniels and what I know of recent graduates. And I'm sure that list grows up more. So I really, it's easy to get overwhelmed with all the big things and other things that can happen, but, you know, got to come back and zoom in on some of these great outcomes right there. So that's really exciting for us.
It's a minor thing, but I really like the idea of the resume writing on here.
Very much so.
Also, very wise.
Started doing it as a freshman, and a lot of teachers throughout campus, throughout their high school career, will let's update, let's build. And so getting it all the way through.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you. Great work. Keep it up.
Board President, just as a point, and I know this will help Lawrence. Up here, when you're right there, it's easy to hear for whatever reason. When you're up here, we need to speak. I have no problem, but we need to speak loudly because it comes a little faint on the recording. So as much as it may be difficult, we're gonna have to speak loudly when we're up here to be heard on the
Something
recording.
I've never been accused of, so. All right, item 6C is our security guard discussion. Officer Busy and Mr. Scholl.
I didn't know there was gonna be so many extras up here. I just made 5 copies for the board members. You guys, if you want to follow along, make it a little easier for you. It's kind of a lengthy PowerPoint, if you bear with me. Good evening. Thank you for having me. Once again, my name is Jeff Busy. I'm your guys' school resource officer through the Chino Valley Police Department. And I am retiring at the end of this school year. My initial plan was to take over for Glenn at the high school here in an unarmed security position. And Mr. Scholl and I had a conversation this summer after Uvalde, and that's where this is kind of taken off from. So just power through it, I guess. So basically, the goal of having it is basically to provide a safe learning environment for everybody on campus, my students, my staff members, visitors to my campus. I also believe having a safety and security team is also there to build a bridge, not only between our law enforcement and the school district, but other school districts as well. I know I've already reached out to Ms. Burns with Aspire and offered up some services to her as well. It's designed to ensure that any threats of violence towards our students and staff are dealt with immediate. One of the biggest things I tell my teachers is there's a 3 to 5 minute response depending on what campus I'm on. If I'm at Heritage, where I spend majority of my time, I'm immediately there. To Dr. Moody's, it's probably that 3 minutes as I run across the campuses to the high school to territorial, 5 minutes or plus. And that's until another officer gets there. Next slide, please. Just power through them. I figured I'd have the clicker. So I did some research because we talked about doing a study session on this, and I started talking to a lot of school districts throughout the state, from southern Arizona all the way to northern Arizona. I learned a lot of the larger school districts have their own form of safety and security division. Most of those have some sort of security officers at their campuses, whether they be armed, unarmed, or semi-armed. And then most of those school districts have also reached out and they've funded school resource officers positions through their police departments that are usually grant funded. And sometimes they rely solely on that SRO like we do here as well. Next one, please. So for example, Mesa Unified School District, they have a safety and security division that's basically semi-unarmed security officers. They carry pepper spray, they carry a baton, and they carry handcuffs. They're basically a mini security department. They have their own dispatch. They have their own cars with lights on it that they respond to the different campuses. They have security officers on each of their high schools and junior high campuses. Each high school and junior high also has a dedicated police school resource officer from the police department on campus. So they have a police officer that is on that campus, and that is their job, to be on that campus and not leave that campus. Their elementary schools do not have an SRO. However, the security has a roving patrol, so they respond to the different, they have a beat per se, where they have 3 or 4 elementary schools, so that security officer rolls around between and handles stuff on those campuses. Their safety and security oversees truancy. Currently, right now, all of our principals handle truancy. So that's taking time out of their work to be administrators and teachers to do truancy. Their safety and security department oversees all fire drills at their campuses, all lockdown drills, all their evacuation drills, where once again, sometimes take the burdens of our principals up having to do that kind of stuff. Chandler Unified has unarmed security on each campus. Each high school and junior high has a dedicated police SRO on campus as well. So once again, you're dealing with the police department that has the staffing to put an armed police officer on that campus that's on that campus all day long. Next slide, please. Gilbert was one of the better ones. Safety and security division, they're all unarmed. When I spoke to their director and I asked why they weren't armed, his response to me was, I don't trust putting a gun in somebody's hand that hasn't had the training and experience. And I said, makes sense. They run 6 to 8 unarmed security officers on each of their high schools, 3 to 4 at the middle schools. And then their elementary schools, they have roving security officers at the elementary schools. But once again, they have a dedicated police school resource officer at each high school and each junior high campus. Tempe Elementary has unarmed security officers. They have 1 to 2 at each school, but they also have a dedicated police school resource officer assigned at each of those schools. Next slide, please. Tempe Union High School has a safety and security division of unarmed security officers, 8 campuses with 11 security officers per campus. So they have quite a bit. And each campus has, once again, a dedicated school resource officer from the police department. Tucson Unified was the first one that I found that had a version of armed security on their school campus. They're the only district in the state with visible armed security that I was able to find. I know I've talked to Dr. Booty, and there's some smaller school districts that I may have missed in southern Arizona as well. But for example, they have a 42-member safety and security division, increasing it up to 50. They're basically run like a police department. They have a chief, they have lieutenants, they have supervisors. 21 of them are armed, providing 24-hour security to the school district. So they have roving patrols 24 hours a day, 12 months out of the year, 365 days, where they respond to alarms at the schools, that kind of stuff that the police department doesn't necessarily get there. They have 89 total campuses and handle everything from their crosswalk to after-hour patrol. Once again, they're a mini security company with their own dispatch. Slide, please. One other thing with Tucson is they just started adding their armed security on campus during the day when students are on campus. They were hiring 8 more armed positions for that reason only. Flagstaff Unified School District, they have 1 person who oversees safety and security of the school district, and he is also one of their 2 security officers. They have 1 security officer at each high school, so the district has 2 of them. They're both retired law enforcement, and they carry concealed on campus. Only their superintendent principals know that they're armed. They wear BDUs and a polo. They teach in classrooms if the teachers ask. Their job is to build a relationship with the students. And then if something were to happen, they're there to engage and stop the threat. The police department currently has staffing for 2 school resource officers that split the city on an east-west type thing. They cover the 2 high schools, 2 middle schools, and 8 elementary schools. But due to staffing shortages in their police department, there's no SRO assigned to any school at this time. They've been pulled out of the schools and they've been reassigned to patrol. So the only safety and security they have are the 2 concealed carry employees of the district. Kingman Unified School District has no safety and security division. They actually contract an unarmed security company for all their schools. Schools inside the city limits, the police department, Kingman City Police Department provides an SRO at the high school and the junior high. They have 1 high school that is outside of the city limits. They've actually contracted, it's in Golden Valley, I believe. They've contracted with the sheriff's office. A sheriff's deputy retired and has kept his reserve status with the police department, with the sheriff's office, which means you keep all your certifications, you're still a police officer, you just don't get paid. And then the school district went out and obtained a COPS grant, and they pay his salary on the COPS grant. So they have a uniformed armed sheriff's deputy on their high school campus. Next slide, please. Rescue Unified, they have no safety and security division. They have 3 unarmed school safety officers assigned to the high school only. They have a designated school resource officer that is partially paid by the high school, and he is assigned to the high school only. Things have gotten to the point there where Mile High Middle School is currently exploring the grant option to obtain an SRO because he does not leave the high school to go to the middle schools because he's paid by the high school and the police department. Humboldt, no safety and security division. They have 2 unarmed security officers at Bradshaw Mountain High School, only nothing at their middle school or their elementary schools. And then PVPD, Prescott Valley PD, provides an SRO at Bradshaw Mountain High School and Glassford Hill Middle School. Next slide, please. What we have, CVUSD, our school district, we currently don't have a safety and security division other than our principals who are part of a safety team. We have 1 armed security officer assigned to the high school. Chino Valley Police Department supplies 1 SRO for all 4 schools. So roughly 2,400 students is how many kids I have, and that's what I consider every day. Due to staffing issues with Chino Valley PD, I could be pulled at any time for a priority as patrol. Patrol is always a priority. And that actually currently happened this school year between September into October, beginning of November, about a month and a half. I was reassigned to patrol. They allowed me to keep my normal day shift hours, so I was still trying to get to the schools when I can. If they called me, I can, but my presence on campus was a lot less than what it was before. I was stuck to the radio and happened to be on the road. Just to give you an idea, some of the things that I've done as the SRO and a member of our district safety team is I've worked with staff and trying to improve all of our campuses. And that starts out with our active shooter lockdown training. We've revamped the total way we've done it this last year, started actually last year with bringing it into teachers. I have 2 great, Mr. Prada and Ms. Bryce have been excellent in their lockdown drills, really trying to push the envelope on training their teachers and putting their teachers to the test. We've incorporated stop the bleed training for all of our principals and our paras in the classrooms if somebody was injured. And then obviously working with our safety committee to update the emergency flip charts in the room. That's just, it's not required of me. It's just something, a passion that I took on wanting to make our campuses safe. Next slide, please. So how could armed security officers and safety personnel, a security department benefit us? I think the biggest part is it puts an immediate response to a crisis situation on campus. I can tell you right now that Stoneman, the Parkland shooting, Parkland in Florida, they had 8 unarmed security officers on campus. One of the security officers actually saw that student walking onto campus with a firearm, but because they were unarmed, chose not to engage him. Once again, in 2018, police officers failed to act. There were 7 police officers that failed to go into that campus and stop the violence, just like Uvalde. You would think we would learn. 4 years later, we have Uvalde. So putting the immediate responses there is a big thing. Like I said, fire and law enforcement, 3 to 5 minute response time, and that's if we're getting here quick. And that's just getting here. Having that puts a law enforcement type authority figure that is consistently on campus that can build a personal relationship with the students. To me, that's big, similar to an SRO. To me, it's an important combating an active attack. What I want is someone that, what I envision is a 4-member team that rotates through campuses. And the kids get to see the security officer and they get to know them as they grow up through the schools and become friends with them. So if they're on the bus and they hear a student say something, they're not going to wait 2, 3, 4 days to come forward, or they're not going to be afraid to come forward. They have that bond with that security person. They know who it is. They'll come up to them and say, hey, there's something I need to tell you. I try as an SRO. I think I do fairly decent with most of the kids. Like Mr. Scholl was saying with the stickers, I got on the bus today with the bus collision, and first word out of their mouth was, Officer Jeff, do you have stickers? So, I mean, that's what I'm known for. So, but that's what I want these guys to be. I want them to be approachable. Safety and security issues at campuses can be handled by security officers. And what I mean by that is issues with maybe teachers leaving doors propped open, perimeter doors opening. That was part of the problem with Parkland, was they had 5 open gates giving access to that high school that were not manned and they were not locked. So for me, trying to get around to campuses and find those, I may have Ms. Price tell me I have a teacher that consistently keeps the door open. So trying to get with that teacher and communicate and educate them on how that's not safe. We're a locked campus. I would have someone at each one of those schools basically taking that off the SRO from the police department's job. I don't know if the next guy, I hope the next guy is as proactive as I am, but I can't guarantee that. Safety, and then it adds a visible deterrent to anyone wanting to commit acts of violence on campus. If someone's going to try to come onto our campus and they see that person, hopefully it makes them think twice. Next slide, please. I'd like to incorporate the district training of the active shooter response, stop the bleed, and any emergency drills and operations to the security officers. I want to, in essence, take it away from the police department. I think that's something we should do on our own. We should be training our people. Training would be in-house. We wouldn't be relying on the police department. The security officer would work with the school administrators of their assigned schools to work on their emergency operations. These principals have a binder. I don't know if either one of you, I should ask you to bring it, that they work on emergency procedures, and it's extensive. And talking with like Ms. Bright, all the principals, if we had a security officer that was their home school and they took that responsibility away from them and they worked on those emergency procedures, we made them uniform between all the schools. They can go back to being principals. They can go back to being educators, not worrying about safety. Like I talked about, the security officers could rotate between the campuses. They would have a home school in my vision of this, where they're responsible for that home school. Example, the high school. I would be at the high school. Safety and security issues with locks being broken, gates being left open. That's my responsibility as my home school. But then I would rotate. I may do 2 days at my home school and then a day at Territorial, then a day at Heritage and a day at Del Rio. So I see those kids and I build those bonds with those kids, and then I come back to my home school. So as those kids grow, I don't want to see a kid who spends 3 years at Del Rio, leaves 5th grade and only knows one security officer, then goes over to Heritage and has to learn a new security officer. They're not going to have that bond. They're not going to have that approachable bond if they're not rotating campuses. Next slide, please. So what kind of a candidate is best for this position? Obviously, someone that can interact with our students at all grade levels and build that relationship. My honest is a retired law enforcement officer, preferably someone that still holds their Arizona police officer standards and training certification. As an example, when I retire, if I don't become a police officer at another police department, my certification will last for 3 years. After that, I'd have to basically go through a police academy again. The reason I want someone like that is, number one, they probably haven't been retired too long, less than 3 years. They have very current and recent training. And then I've spoken with Chief Wynn, and then if we reach an IGA, which shouldn't be an issue, he's willing to let those officers stay reserves with the Chino Valley Police Department, which allow their certifications, training certifications, to stay valid. For example, I'm an AZ Post certified instructor in defensive tactics. Another candidate that I've talked to who's interested in this is a firearms instructor. We wouldn't have to rely on the police department for our firearms training. We could keep that in-house. I think the next tier I would look at would be someone that holds their LEOSA certification. And what that is that is a retired police officer who's allowed their certification to lapse. They've gone past those 3 years. However, one of our former presidents, George Bush II, made it law that all law enforcement can carry concealed anywhere in the United States as long as you carry your credentials, including reserve officers. So when they retire, they let their certification lapse. They do what's called a LEOSA qualification every year. They have to shoot the state standard for a police officer to qualify on their firearm. And that allows them to carry concealed with valid retired credentials in the state. So once again, they may not be a certified police officer anymore. However, they have that training, they have that experience, they have that up-to-date training, and they're firing every year. So we're not dealing with someone like the Gilbert guy said. I'd question putting a handgun in some of my employees' hands, the accuracy. So we have someone that's trained and current. Next slide, please. Yes, thank you. I wanted to get through this. I don't want to keep you guys here all night long. The next one would be, if I can't fill all 4 positions with law enforcement or LEOSA, would be looking for somebody with former military with an honorable discharge. And the main reason with that is they've had some sort of combat tactical training. They understand firearms. I don't want someone that is untrained or does not have the experience we need. There's often times with the large security companies in the Valley, you run into people who just can't seem to get hired by a police department. That's their ultimate goal in their life, is to be a police officer. And for whatever reason, something in their background, maybe they got hired by a police department, got washed out. The next best thing where they're carrying a gun, have some sort of authority and a badge, is a security company. And that's kind of what I want to get away from. I don't want someone that's been unable to be a police officer. I don't want someone that's 20, 21 years old that I'm going to have to worry about they talking to teachers, or they maybe even talking to high school students. What is their main function here? I want somebody that has that training and that experience. Next slide. I've stated, by having the armed security at each campus, we ensure that there is an immediate response in campus to a crisis situation. We're going to build those relationships with students in an effort to prevent an active attack. Recently, we had the threats at Heritage Middle School, which were dealt with that day before all the social media mess came out that night. It was done and over with by lunch that day. I felt the campus was safe. I still feel the campus is safe. Had a parent call today asking if it was safe for her daughter to go to school. And my response to her was, if the campus is open, if school is open, that's because I believe it's safe. I have my own family members, nieces and nephews that go to our campuses. If I felt it was dangerous, I'd cancel school. It offers that visible deterrent, and depending on the security officers hired, all of their training and proficiency could be handled internally, meaning we don't have to rely on the police department. Next slide, please. So things to consider. Let's get down to the nuts and bolts of it. I want to say I appreciate you guys approving the unarmed positions. I really do. My honest opinion is I think this is where we need to go. My question is, are they going to be on their own salary schedule? Are we going to be able to pay them based on their training and experience? The salary we currently have for the unarmed, I'm willing to do because I love this and I want to be here for the kids. But to get that experience that I'm asking for, we're probably not going to get it in that salary schedule. I would like to see the officers on a 10-month, preferably 1,460 hours to allow for a couple in-service training days. They don't need to be full-time. They'll have twice-a-year firearms qualification, defensive tactics training, and then they're actually going to be put through the active shooter training I've been putting the police department and other police officers through. Next slide, please. I think we need a supervisor to oversee, coordinate, and track several things. Training with the district-wide teachers and for officers. I expect the guys to write written incident reports if they have to deal with something on campus. So reviewing those, keeping those on track is a liability issue. The safety concerns with the school. If the security officer is trying to work with their school on a safety issue, maybe it's equipment issue, we need to have that meeting with the higher ups. That's what that supervisor would do. They would liaison with the local and law enforcement and fire officials, especially with special events. So to give you guys an idea, football games, graduation, and dances. Normally, I don't work the dances. I work football games and graduation. The schools, the district pays me an off-duty rate. The Chino Valley Police Department is raising that to $50 an hour for our police officers. This is something where if we had 4 armed security officers of our own district, even if we paid them time and a half, depending on the pay scale, you're going to be saving money on that. So next slide. So I talked about Flagstaff Unified and their armed concealed carry officers. I can tell you this, they hired one this year. He's a retired NAU police officer. They started him at $30 an hour. Their supervisor, who's been there 6 years, retired Coconino County Sheriff, is at $40 per hour. And that's, to me, that's a lot of money. And I understand that. Both are retired law enforcement. And then I did forget their job title and description. I apologize for that, but just basically the way that they listed out the requirements of what they expect. Tucson Unified starts their armed security officers at $20.41 an hour, depending on experience. They will take anybody that meets their requirements. So that 21-year-old, that 22-year-old, if they meet their basic hiring requirements, they'll hire that person. They have 10 armed employees. 2 of those work 12 months out of the year full-time. The other 8 are on the 10.5-month schedule. They start their supervisors at $22.50 an hour, and they work a 12-month schedule. So I think back one more, 2 more, I think. 1 more, please. Okay, so to select the best candidates with the training and experience and to hold them to the high standard, the following pay range should be considered. I believe we should start our armed security officers anywhere between $20.54 and $22 an hour. I'd like to see that they be on a 1460-hour schedule, and depending on the experience, if they're certified, reserve, LEOSA, or no certification. So if I have a LEOSA certified officer who just has that annual qualification, I could see something like that at $20.54 an hour. I've spoken to a retired Chino Valley police officer, police sergeant actually, who's interested in doing this, loves kids, Matt Gronick, if any of you know who he was. Matt still has his police officer certification. Matt is a firearms instructor. Matt is a Glock armorer. So one of my next slides, I proposed the type of firearm. Matt could do all the maintenance and cleaning on those. Everything would be kept in-house, would not rely on the police department. So someone like that, because he brings a little more, I could see paying Matt $22 an hour. The supervisor, I just mimicked what Tucson say, start him at $22.50 an hour. 1460-hour schedule, maybe a 1480 just to get things ready at the beginning of the school year. Personally, when I retire, I don't really want to work full-time. The teacher's hours sounds great to me, and that's what I would look forward to. Have all my holidays off. Next slide, please. So things to consider, equipment. The most expensive one is going to be your body armor. Currently, the Chino Valley Police Department, most of our guys go through a company called Angel Armor. They have 3 categories, anywhere from $913 up to $1,158, roughly about $5,000 for 4 pieces of body armor. Body armor has to be replaced every 5 years. That's the big reoccurring cost. Currently, right now, I can tell you I have pre-approved. I put that in parentheses because I reached out. And I've been told the Chino Valley Police Foundation would more than likely fund the first purchase of body armor for the 4 guys if we choose to do that. So that saves the district roughly $5,000 to $6,000 up front. That gives the district 5 years to figure out where we're going to come up with that money, whether it's fundraisers or however we decide to do it. The body armor would be owned by the district. Now, granted, it's measured to the officers. So if for some reason after a year I decided to leave, I would suggest you guys to hire a chubby guy that's about my build, and you can say, here's your body armor, chubby guy, and fit the last guy, go for it. Firearms, I'm proposing the Glock 17 9mm. Chino Valley Police Department is moving to a different Smith & Wesson, but they're going to 9mm as well. New purchased, depending on dynamics, I can purchase these as a police officer through a local company here in town, ProForce. I can get them for $410 basically each. I talked to a high school teacher who is a federal firearms dealer, and he can't get anywhere near $500 on that. If we were to go into Sportsman's or Davidson's or something like that, we're looking at $500, $550 for a brand new one. So by doing something where we work something out where it's purchased and assign ownership over to the school district, roughly $2,000 to buy those, they would be owned by the school district. Policies and procedures to come, but I would like to see over the summers, they locked in a safe for the summer. during the school year, the guys have them if we go that direction. Next slide. Ammunition. The duty ammo I'm recommending would be a Hornady Critical Defense 135 grain 9mm, because that's what Chino Valley PD uses. I've spoken to Chief Wynn, and we would be able to piggyback and buy, purchase when they purchase. It's roughly, this is just public, and I don't know if they get a better deal at the police department. It's roughly $64 per 50 rounds. Each officer would get 50 rounds of their duty ammo, so roughly $260 there. And then training ammo, I started out with 1,000 rounds annually, which is roughly for training ammo would be about $500. Uniforms, I'd like to maybe see something. They're going to need some equipment, maybe a holster. I'd like to see standardized polos, that kind of stuff, make us look a little more uniform. I threw in there roughly $300 per officer for gear. Next slide, please. So to outfit your forearmed security officers, if you gave me $5,000 would be basically your initial investment. With a recurring annual cost of roughly about $1,000 a month or a year for ammunition. And then, like I said, in 5 years would be the body armor. If this is something that is approved by the board or the direction the board wants to go, quite honestly, I told Mr. Scholl I could have this up and running by the beginning of the school year. We have a employee with the school district right now, and just to give you guys an example on the pay, he's a retired school resource officer out of California. He carries his LEOSA certification. He works in facilities, and he makes $20 an hour. So if he went unarmed, which he's not comfortable doing, but if he went at the pay rate that was proposed at that, he would be losing anywhere from $4 to $6 an hour to protect our kids. And I think that's where we're going to lose interest of some of the retired law enforcement officers. Next slide. So we're asking for law enforcement quality employees, and we expect that type of quality out of them. So to give you guys an average, right now the Quad City area, YCSO, Prescott Valley PD, Chino Valley PD, and Prescott PD, if you average the starting salary for a police officer, it's $27.54 an hour. What that gets you is an officer that's graduated the police academy. He's completed his field, he or she has completed their field training program, and they are a solo police officer with no experience whatsoever. And they're getting $27.54 an hour. I'm proposing $20.54 an hour at a base for an officer. For example, for me, when I retire, anywhere from 24 to 24 and a half years of experience. Matt Gronick's roughly pushing, I think he was 22 years. So you're getting a lot of quality, a lot of experience out of that. So, and once again, like I just wanted to say, the end goal is to provide that safe learning environment for our kids. And what we're asking for them, if they are going to be armed, to do is when that threat comes, to stop it in the parking lot, not even let it get onto our campus and deal with it right there. It is asking a lot, especially, it's hard for me 24 years retiring, and, that's kind of what I want to get away from. But I love the kids too much. I got suckered into staying. So, questions?
Wait, I have some.
Yes.
Okay, so wait, clarification. You're not going anywhere. Or are you?
I'm leaving as a police officer. I will be retired and no longer a police officer. At a minimum, I will be taking over as one of the unarmed security
Okay, 'cause
positions
I
on
thought that was
campus.
the deal. I just wanted to make sure that you
Yes.
weren't going anywhere.
Yes.
That was my question.
When we talked originally, it was proposing this, and
Okay.
I'm willing to take an unarmed position because I want to be around the kids and I love the kids. I just think if we're gonna do this, let's do it right. I mean, I know me personally, if I was unarmed and someone came on campus, I'm going to do whatever I can. I'll take a darn chair with me. I'll take a table with me. I'll do what I have to do, and that's me. I can't count on the next person to have the same stupidity, I guess you could say, as I would, to run after someone, passion, to run after someone when I'm unarmed. It's crappy we have to go here. Society's gone here. It is. It truly is. But if we're going to make these kids safe, let's do it. Let's do it right. Let's set the model, in my opinion, for every other school.
I agree. I don't even know where to start. I have so many things.
Okay.
But you hit the nail on the head. When we first started talking about this, I was all gung ho, and I still am. Please don't get me wrong. But I'm sad listening to all of this. you made it real. And that's sad.
I'm a numbers guy, and in the
Yeah.
training I teach my teachers is 98.6% of the time there's one attacker. And almost every time that attacker is confronted by somebody, whether it's a police officer or somebody that's armed, is, well, the new fad is just a surrender so they can make a name for themselves. But the attack stops at that point. And that's what we're finding out. And I teach all my teachers, it's a numbers game. Hold off 3 to 5 minutes. Give me 3 to 5 minutes to be there, to be that confrontation, to end it. And if I can have someone on campus where that 3 to 5 minutes is cut down to 30 seconds to a minute, to me, that's even greater.
I think if you would have asked me even 3 years ago, should we have armed officers, I'd say absolutely not. I believe we do too. We need to now, though. One thing that greatly concerns me, and I know you crunch the numbers, and I appreciate that, you can go to McDonald's and start at $17 an hour, and you're asking someone to carry a gun and put their life on the line for $20 an hour. I don't think I would want to be responsible for that. I personally don't know where the budget is, or where it's going to come from, but I think it has to be more than that.
And Mr. Scholl had kind of mentioned that to me, and, I just threw out numbers that I felt were equivalent and comparative to, Tucson, and I just figured I gave you the top and the bottom that I could find. You guys in the end make that decision. And then it's, if I'm part of that hiring process or in that process, it's my job to sell it to the guys that I want here and pick the guys that I want here. Like I say, I already have one that's highly interested. At a district employee, I might have to schmooze a little bit more because he's full-time and have to wheel and deal with him. And then I've heard of some other recently retired press kit officers that might be interested. So, I don't want them to look at $14 to $16 an hour and say, no, like you said, you can go work at McDonald's for $17 an hour. If
And you
as a
don't have to
board,
carry a gun.
yes, and as a board, if you guys choose to go more, that's up to you. I'm giving you numbers that I feel talking to some of these guys would be interested in doing the position for that amount.
Well, and one thing you got to remember is most of these security officers would be retired. So this would not be their only income.
Yes.
And
I still
so,
get that, but I don't know.
So I see, like, I get where you're coming from, but then I see it from another perspective, and mine is we're 4-day-a-week school. It's a 10-month position.
Yeah, 10 and a half months.
And you get your holidays. And so when you add all of that in,
Yes.
I absolutely agree. I'm still hung up with, we're putting a child's life in the category of they're only worth $20.54 an hour, is where I see it. But that's just an opinion.
You had a question, sir?
Well, mine's not a question, it's just, it's dumb, it's dumb. Presume the SROs are always in uniform on campus. Are the security officers, do they have a uniform of some sort, so they're identified?
So my suggestion would be something very similar to what I'm wearing today. I took my gun off today and my badge and everything because I coach JV baseball, and I like to separate from those kids because they get confused. They don't know if they need to call me. Usually I'm in sweats, but since I had to be here, they get confused and call me either Officer Jeff on the field instead of Coach Jeff. So I took it off, but it'd be very similar to this. Uniform polos. I prefer this color, it's school colors.
You'd have a logo.
It would have the school district logo on here, safety and security below it, their name on it. They may wear, I usually, when I wear like this, my holster, my gun is on this type of a belt. I carry extra mags, and then I carry a pair of handcuffs in my back pocket. They might have some sort of a duty belt type thing that the officers work. And I'm not looking to add tasers to these guys. I'm not looking to add body cameras or anything to them, because I think the role should be very specific. Pretty much all of our schools have a behavior coach to deal with discipline, other than the high school. Glenn deals with the low end discipline. We have 2 principals, assistant principals that deal with the discipline. Their main function is going to be the safety and security of the campus.
The reason for my question, I think, was pretty basic. Something happens, the kids need to be able to identify the person really quickly.
Yep.
And that's the reason I was hoping you would answer what we are.
Yep.
And if we go with the armed ones, obviously they'll have the holster also, but at least there'll be a shirt with
Yes.
the logo on it, with the security officer. Great, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have another question.
Yes, ma'am.
So just to be clear, are you looking for I'm
One
just
at each
thinking
campus.
One on each campus and then plus a supervisor?
No,
So the supervisor would be one of the
Yes.
four? Okay. Okay.
So we currently, last board meeting, the meeting before you approved 4 security officer positions. We have not filled those intentionally, knowing that this was going to come up as part of the discussion. Today, you're not approving anything today. Today is just meant to kind of introduce, think about it. I know we kind of did that also in October. In Paulden, we talked, this was just part of the entire discussion, but I wanted to kind of throw it out there, answer any questions, get the community to ask any questions. Hopefully this will get out and then we can do some things to get it out. Because this is a big deal and this is a decision that we're not taking lightly. But on top of that, something that came out last week that was interesting is right now we have a school safety grant that funds 2 counselors, and we want to keep those. Those are our priority right now. But they've also added the possibility of armed security officers that they would be willing to fund armed security officers at schools in lieu of SROs. We could have all the money in the world and we wouldn't be able to get another SRO from the city of Chino or town of Chino Valley. They just don't have the officers to do that. As Jeff mentioned earlier, he was pulled off SRO duty because of the lack of officers. There's just not an officer position available. Or if we didn't make the position, there's not the officers to fill the position. That
and if
would
you
need
pay
another SRO.
attention to what's going on with all the other cities, it's a battle. It's a fight. We fight against Prescott, against the sheriff's office just came up with the $10,000 signing bonus. They're giving all their guys to lure. They already took one of our officers, went to the sheriff's office. It's a competitive out there between police departments to find qualified applicants. So he's right. I mean, the police department looked at earlier this year, and I don't know if they've got it yet, is the COPS grant. They wanted to go to the COPS grant to fund the SRO. And I was 100% against that because when you go on the COPS grant, you're stuck to one school. You're required to teach 90 hours in a school year. It doesn't give me the mobility of moving around to all the schools. I can't do territorial Tuesdays like I do at territorial early childhood. You know, I would be stuck at whatever school they chose to be at. And then the other schools would just be up to patrol response. So when the high school calls for a fight or a vape or something like that, they get the patrol officer that shows up, that patrol officer who's there just to, nothing against them. I know what it's like. I've been doing it, but they're just there to take another report. They don't have that buy off with the kids. They're not sitting down with the kids and talking to them about the disadvantage of vaping or how to be the better person instead of fighting, being the better person and learning to walk away, you know, change our future. You know, I tell my kids when they fight, how are we going to stop wars if you guys can't walk away from each other and learn to just get along? Try to build that. You're not going to have that out of a patrol guy. And it's no disrespect to patrol guys, but they're there to work the road.
I have one more question.
Yes, ma'am.
I have more than one, but
Okay.
this one for sure. With your 4 officers, will they rotate?
Yes, ma'am.
Or so what, so.
My vision would be this. They would have their home school. They would spend, so for example, high school is my home school. I would spend Monday, Tuesday this week at the high school. Wednesday, I would maybe go to Territorial, Thursday to Del Rio. The next Monday, I would go to Heritage. And then by that next Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm back at my home school.
Okay, all right, that was my question.
Have anything?
So how's the rest of the district community reacting to this plan and this proposal? And has it been brought forth to SEAC?
Has
and,
not.
Teachers and other employees, administrators, et cetera?
It's been discussed at the administrative level. It has not been taken to SEAC, and that's why it is not a voting item today, is to give time to get some kind of introduce it as we're seriously thinking about it, and then getting some feedback as part, you know, from the community, from the teachers and everything else. So I am working with the SEAC chair on a Thursday, and that'll be part of the next agenda, which is on Tuesday, I think is the next SEAC meeting. But this really is meant to solicit that input from the community and from our stakeholders.
And so then when we go to vote next month, we'll have all of that communication and insight from.
If there is any, correct.
If there is any.
Well, I think that it's our children's safety
Uh-huh.
and our teachers' safety, everybody's safety. And I agree with you 100% that having an unarmed officer isn't going to do us any good, in my opinion. We have to have them armed, like you said. I mean, I just think that that's really important. And, you know, as a board, you know, obviously education is important, but if our children are fearing coming to school, that's a big problem. So,
And while I agree with that, I do see Mike's point also. I think if there's pushback though from the people that's actually educating our children, that's doing as much harm as not having an armed officer. So personally, I would like to see buy-in from everyone.
And to your, to answer your question, the limited response that we have received has been more positive than negative. More people that think it would be a good idea. And there's been some that have said that they would prefer not. But I think none of us would want this to happen. But this, I think, I agree that it's probably something that we have to move to just because of circumstances of society.
We don't want to wait till after the fact situation.
Like you said, everybody talks about Sandy Hook, what happened there, Stoneman Douglas in Parkland, Florida, Uvalde, all been failures, whether it's been on the school side, police department side, or both. If someone were ever to say Chino Valley in the news, I want it to be, they got it done and they got it done right and not a single kid was hurt. That's what I want to happen, so.
And I think that's why when we talked about the armed versus the unarmed, well, we thought it had to be the armed, because that's the ultimate deterrent if something happens.
well, like he said, even at the one school, there was somebody that wasn't armed that, sorry, sir, you can't have a gun on campus. Wait, I don't have anything to stop you, you know?
And there's been instances where teachers have confronted students on campuses. Part of my presentation I do with the teachers, and they've confronted armed students on campus. And they've been able to disarm them or hold them down till police get there. But I think with that, what you're dealing with is a little bit of, they have that personal touch, which one was a school counselor actually talking to the student in her office who's having some mental issues. And based on his statements, she kind of figured out that he had a gun on him. And he did. And it took her 45 minutes of talking him down to actually get it out of his backpack and give it up and not use it. I mean, so she had that constant bond with him. Could we do that with unarmed? Yeah. But if we have someone like Uvalde that's not one of our students coming onto campus, unarmed's not going to do anything for it.
Mike, did you have another comment? I'm sorry. Okay. All right, well,
Thank you.
absolutely. This is not an
Thank
action.
you.
I think we have a lot to think about before next month.
Y'all know where to find me. If you come up with some more questions, feel free to track me down. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
All right, item 6D, strategic planning process.
This is not a voting item, but we could use maybe some guidance and discussion. We had a presentation from Julie Bacon. This is her proposal. I had a conversation with Cindy Thomas this morning. It's kind of extended out probably beyond what you guys may want. I think they have it finishing in March. Hopefully you identified or come close to identifying a superintendent prior to that. So just wanted to kind of throw this out there and see opportunity for discussion.
Well, the thing that I mentioned this morning with Mr. Scholl was that it has to be wrapped up before we go into the superintendent selection. Yes, because that was one of our goals.
Yeah, that's
Is
the
that we
reason for it.
wanted to put all this together to get the new person prepared.
Because if you don't do it before, you might as well wait until after with the new superintendent, to be honest.
Yes.
And that was the reason of starting it now instead of after the superintendent.
So I went ahead and asked John if he would maybe reach out to Julie and see if there's any way we can shorten it up just a tad, if that's what the rest of the
And
board.
prioritize some of these items too. There's a lot of stuff in here. Haven't been through this before a couple of times. Some of it may not be as useful as others. So I would really think it'd be better if we ask her, given the time deadline, to prioritize items that she thinks are most critical for us to get through.
And I would think we could do that in the first meeting. Now, when we approve this in March, I believe she actually wants to start with the planning meetings in March. So as soon as we approve it, probably that week after spring break, maybe we'd be able to start those meetings and then start looking at
The
each and
entire
every
schedule.
item and then saying
agree with
what
that,
we
sure.
really want and what we don't want.
That sounds good to me.
Any other comments or questions on that? Again, it was just a discussion and information item this evening. All right. Item 6E, that's me, County Board President meeting recap. So last Tuesday night, Wednesday night, one night last week, at the county school board's office, Mr. Carter held a county board president roundtable. I attended. It was very thought-provoking. There were about 12 of us presidents in attendance, along with superintendents and other administration. I won't go over the list tonight because I think part of this will be part of our strategic planning. There's just a lot of talk about how meetings should run, what should we do with call to the public, when should we have call to the public, just all sorts of different things. And I think it'll be really nice for us to identify those key points going into the strategic planning and making our board be the best it can be for our new superintendent. And I don't want to do that on my own. That's all of us together. So that was just kind of my recap. I already mentioned one thing that I thought was very interesting that I learned. Our Pledge of Allegiance before every board meeting is actually in a state statute. I did not know that. Thought we were just doing it to be patriotic. So that was it. So I'll report more during our planning. All right, item 6F, superintendent's report.
All right, there should be a superintendent report on your table. The enrollment, there's a table that kind of shows enrollment. We're still holding steady on our 100th day at about 38 ADM over last year's ADM. We are at just over 2,400 students. That would be, you got to remember that our preschool and our kinders only count half. They're half size, so we only get half the revenue for them, I guess. And so that accounts for the difference between the ADM and student count. Also the ins and the outs. A student can come the 20th day of school and we only get a 0.8 ADM for them, or they can leave after 80 days and we only get 0.8. So there's a calculation that the AD does for us. But it's good that we're up, and you can see that we're up over even pre-COVID numbers. So that's exciting that we're able to keep those numbers up. Principal search. We have done a paper screen and reached out to applicants, and we are putting together the list of finalists right now. We plan on publicizing that probably at the end of this week or early next week, and we'll get those names out. And then I just want to remind you all that there's some things that you're welcome to attend so that you can have some interaction with them. That'd be on the 22nd of this month and the 23rd, which is a week from tomorrow and a week from Wednesday.
What time is that?
There's going to be, I think, dinner at 4:45, and that'll be on the 22nd. It will be in the Culinary Arts Building. And on the 23rd, it'll be in the cafeteria at the middle school, and you'll have time to interact with the applicants or the finalists. And then also immediately after that, there's going to be a community meet and greet, so you can kind of have an idea or witness how these finalists interact with community members. And if you have questions, for those that were, a couple of you were there when Dr. Moody was hired. It seemed like one applicant kind of sat at the table and just spoke with that board member who happened to be at that table. You can go to the community meet and greet and interact with the other applicants as well, if you'd like. So that will be at the respective libraries on that 22nd and 23rd at 6.
So the last meeting that we had, you had only had one applicant. I'm assuming we got more.
Right now we have 4 for the high school and 2 for the middle school.
Okay.
We had more. We had an applicant that applied for both that withdrew for personal reasons over the weekend. So that's where we're at. Some staff planning at the last board meeting, or March 6th board meeting. Just a reminder, that is the Wednesday before our normal date. Typically, we do the second Monday. This is the first Wednesday of the month, because the second Monday is during spring break. The 6th is a Wednesday. Is it a Monday? Then it's not the 6th. What day is it? It's the 8th, sorry. Is it right on the schedule?
No, it says the 6th.
This says the 6th, so it's that Wednesday, I believe.
Okay, so Wednesday, the 8th.
Wednesday, the 8th, sorry.
Okay. I'm like, I'm looking at.
No,
this.
it's Wednesday, the 8th.
Okay, so that's actually the second Wednesday.
Yes, it is the second Wednesday
Okay.
because of that first. It's just the Wednesday before the normal date is really what it was meant to be.
Okay.
It's the Wednesday before the normal date. And I apologize for the mix up there. But it's early because the second Monday is during spring break and we wanted to not do it during spring break. Normal time, the Wednesday before. Last month, I brought to you a staffing plan. We're still working on the financials on that, so we should plan on bringing that to you in March. We will also be recommending contracts and work agreements and things like that at the March meeting as well. So we'll be busy doing a lot of personnel stuff at the March meeting. Staff recruitment, a couple of us, Brandy, Julie and I went down to the ADE job fair, which was on the 4th. There were more districts at the job fair than there were prospective teachers. And many of the prospective teachers that registered were visa holders. They were looking for a district to sponsor them, their H-1B or J-1 visa. A little disappointing. We got a couple leads that hopefully will pan out, but disappointing nonetheless. I know Dr. Moody and Mrs. Wolf are going to the NAU job fair. I think it's the end of the month. Yeah. And I'm hoping to have a little bit more luck there. I've been to the Phoenix job fair, the AD job fair before, and a lot of those applicants really want to stay in the Maricopa County region. So it's tough. There were a few, like I mentioned, but NAU should hopefully be a better pool of applicants, one to maybe move around in northern Arizona. Project update. Things are moving at a snail's pace, but we think that they're moving. The teacherage they have a purchase order. They're working on design right now, and I'm getting that taken care of. Parking lot still set for March. Autism playground should be as soon as it dries out, which is supposed to rain tomorrow. So that will be making it more difficult. If you want to, the one that's going the fastest seems to be the bathrooms at the high school. If you drive by, there's actually walls.
Oh, wow.
Or there's framing. I won't say walls. There's framing that's making up the bathroom. So that's exciting. And they were working on that today. Tech wall down the road, bus lane down the road, bleachers this summer. The West Gym probably this summer. East Gym, they're, I think, working on plans for that shortly.
Yeah, that's again, waiting for that 50-degree temperature.
Okay.
East Gym.
And then the gym floor at Heritage over the summer and our district AC project, we found out that they can only apply the roof sealant when it's 50 degrees or warmer. So that is going to be a little bit of a problem. That means they can't do this roof sealant part between October and March. So we'll have some creative scheduling on that. Hopefully they can continue with the HVAC portion and seal down the road.
Sounds good. They can get the units installed, they just can't put the sealant on?
Well, when they install, there'll be some roof penetrations that they have to work on, along with potentially capping the swamper inlets.
The old ones.
Yeah, the idea was to put a sealant on the entire roof, not just where they made the new penetrations, because we have roof leaks all over the place. And so, the idea was just to do all the roofs, and it just might have to be delayed. They might have to do some temporary sealing until that reaches 50 degrees. So, the aggregate expenditure limit was waived by the legislature last week. I do want to do a shout out to, I believe all of our legislators were voted affirmative on that. And I know that on the Senate side, one of the sponsors was Senator Bennett, he is our senator. So I wanted to give him a shout out. You all know about the bus accident today. No one was hurt, 14 territorial students on the bus. I was there and the driver of the semi said, I'm taking full responsibility in front of the police officer. He said that. So, but it downs a bus until that can be repaired and or inspected by the DPS to be roadworthy. But we were able to, 40 minutes or so delayed, got a new bus. That driver got on the new bus, kids got on the new bus, and they were off. So I want to thank the Chino Valley PD on that. They did a great job with the kids. Officer Jeff was on the bus, gave out his little sticker badges and making sure the kids were comfortable and okay. And they seemed to do well. Brandy was there. I was there. The mechanics, the driver, and the police officers all did a great job. So that is my report.
All right, thank you. Item 6G1, financial reports for activity for January 31st, 2023. All yours.
All right. Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, administration, staff, ladies and gentlemen. Just a quick review of the district's financial picture as of the end of January of the current year. Got a few things to say and then a few focused funds to look at. Let's get back to where I was a second ago. So if we look at the month end report, we see that I've got some numbers there. If our budget's going to be revised, I say we revise it at the March meeting and then look for some April changes, then we can revise it again at the May meeting. Last year we did a revision March of 22, April of 22, and May of 22. I don't think we need to do that, but I'd like to do that at the March meeting. And then we just true up is the verb, I guess, true up our data with the counts and factors that the school finance division of the Department of Education has for us. And that gives us 2 chances to do it. So if we look at the $18 million operations budget, that is subject to change. And we have this would be the second year where we transfer some of those funds to our capital fund. And we know we've got some costs coming back to our M&O fund. At the current time, 4% of that operating fund is not encumbered, it's free. We do support several other funds with that operating fund. And then once the revenue shows up, we reduce our expenses there and push it back to those other funds. Capital, about 8.6% unencumbered. And again, that's a little overstated because we've been bankrolling, so to speak, or reserving some funds for these staff that come back into our operating fund. And we can do that transfer from the capital back to the operating fund. And then our adjacent ways, we have big plans for that fund. One would be to supplement about 70,000 on the teacher project. There's places we can use for the fire lane. We can fund the road base and that asphalt cover with adjacent ways. There's also places for chip seal and resurfacing, and there's places in front of the Del Rio building that we can use that fund for. And then in the future, if we're going to really aggressively look at chip sealing and perhaps removing soil and subfill over at Del Rio and Heritage, we could raise the levy for our adjacent ways and have more money to do those things. And then that wouldn't be a direct capital cost. We could pass that through to the local taxpayer. It'd be a very low rate, but we've been picking up 100,000 a year in that for about 5 years, maybe more.
Oh,
And we could
closer to 12. I think it was before I was in the business office. So this is my 13th year out.
It's always been 100,000. So
Yeah.
I've checked back 5 years and that's what I've seen. I haven't gone back further, but so we could raise that to 200,000 to 300,000. Because estimates, we're going to get some bids, estimates to completely redo the parking areas in front of Heritage and Del Rio, probably 600,000 to take out 18 inches of fill and replace that and then pave on top of that.
Will that qualify?
It has to be the fire lane area.
Some of it will.
Fire,
Just
okay.
for some of it.
I was thinking, normally, our parking lots don't qualify because it's out of the right of way. So, but the fire lanes do qualify.
So, and even like some of these parking lots do, not the parking spots, basically. If an ambulance has to come in and make a turnaround in our parking lot,
You gotta have
the area that's the turnaround, but the actual parking spot areas don't. And there's some other things like fencing that we experience that, but any kind of fencing associated with that would not, and so forth. So what we rely on is the contractor to come up with a number, because they're familiar with adjacent ways. They deal with it all the time. The contractor will come up with a number that is adjacent ways eligible We get that approved by the SFOB, or they don't call it an approval. I can't remember what the term is.
Yeah, there's a document that the contractor, in this case, Sunland Asphalt in front of the Del Rio building, would prepare. And it's an industry standard for places like this. And then once the School Facilities Board approves that, right now, we think that might be up to 130,000. And the bid was awarded at 212,000. And now we think the total price, once this Hess engineer gets his final results back, the final price may go up a little bit based on what the city's requiring.
But we could throw our adjacent ways money into the larger package though.
Yep.
Great, sounds good.
And there's not been an expenditure there, I don't think, for at least 3 years in that fund.
2019, 20. Yeah.
And then that was for some parking areas over behind Del Rio, I guess.
It was a fire lane behind Del Rio and Heritage,
So that fund is
or the
continuing,
bus lane.
continuing to grow. Any questions on just the budget summaries? Those are the 3 budgets there. 3 funds I'd like to highlight just briefly. If you go to the vertical page there, these are cash funds. And the county treats them as a cash fund, and if there's not cash in the fund, they're real hesitant about approving expenditures, so we always have to have cash in these. They're not like budget funds with the ones I just discussed. Halfway down, 526, tax credit fees. You see, we started the year with 271,000. We brought in revenues of 66,000. We've spent 52,000. We've got 30,000 encumbered. So we've still in that fund got 255,000. We really appreciate the community support of that tax credit program.
And those flyers are actually sitting in the hallway to go out for our tax credit solicitation this month.
And there's 12,000 of them.
Something like that, yeah.
We signed off on that, so that's what we hope. 691 fund, that's the fund that Superintendent mentioned. We've got all these school facilities board projects. And this is also a cash fund. So as soon as we get cash pushed in, today we sent out, well, we got approval for $101,000. They wire it to the county. They'll go out and checks to our architect for the HVAC systems Wednesday morning, and then the cash will go back to 0. So as soon as we get it, we spend it on those exact invoices, so we don't accumulate cash there. Expenses year to date, you add the 101,000 now, about almost 384,000 that we spent there and received from that fund. And the last one, we got behind a little bit, 959. We have a youth transition project at the high school. And for about a year, almost a year, my office was in close contact with these folks, but they had so many turnaround, so much turnaround of staff that we got a check yesterday for 33,600, and you'll see that fund become a little more healthy, where you have revenue and cash, and then we can move expense into there. And this is one of the funds that our operating fund puts on its back and just carries through salary. And there's 3 folks that are paid from that fund. So once we get the cash, we push it back and we move the expense. Any questions on our cash fund balances? Just a couple more things then. If we look at the 2-page report, and it ends at January, and it's the one that ends with the 7.7 million starting February. That 2-page is called our fiscal year cash flow. There's a little line I put there right at the halfway down point, 16.4 million of revenue year to date and 14.4 million of expense year to date. So that's a good sign, $2 million ahead on revenue, but we know a lot of that is some of these federal programs that have really benefited the district, and they bring cash and expense in. But again, some of that's maybe a little bit unrealistic for just regular operations. Because all revenues are counted there. And then the last is our regular cash balance fund. And this is just cash, all funds. And you see at this point, 7.7 million for the year. And that is very healthy. Give us some options. And that's all I had for the financial report.
Fantastic. Would you like to go ahead and go into the student activity fund?
Yes, we will. And our employee that does this has had some health issues, so we apologize for the January one being, the December one being late, and we've just included that here as well. If you look at the bottom of the December student activity fund, you see an expense of $32.90. That's for a wrestling tournament that we sponsor at Mile High that's at Bradshaw Mountain High School, right?
It's at actually Finley Toyota Center.
Toyota Center, and that's done. So then that encumbrance for December was spent. So at the end of January, there's nothing encumbered still, and that's simple. We've got several. You see the 3,840 still at the high school student council. There's a number of activities that they're always working on at the high school.
End of the year too.
Yep. And that's our summary. That's accurate, up to date. These are running totals that are live, and the balances are again at the bottom, 135,000 end of January. Any questions on student activity?
This side, that's it? Nope, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Item number 7A through G, consent agenda. We could have a motion to approve tonight's consent
I
agenda.
will make a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
All in favor, or a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Item 8A, personnel report.
So prior to the supplement, which is on your desk, which is strictly all coaches. So we have our spring coaches that we're beginning to hire. We had certified, 3 new classified, 1 new classified sub, 6 resignations, 1 retiring, and 3 retiring, 1 certified change, 4 classified changes, one coach plus the supplements, and then 49 timesheets. It's actually gone down, I think, a little bit from where we have been on that. So it's beginning that time of year where we'll start getting resignations and retirements as people decide to move on. At the same time, we're hoping to bring people on board to fill those spots.
So what was the contract deadline for signing?
Well, what'll happen is at the March board meeting on the 8th, you will issue contracts. So April 8th, they are due.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
They have a month. So we'll know by April 8th how good or bad we are as far as retention staff.
Correct. And we are really, the principals are doing a really good job about letting staff know, hey, if you know, let us know so that we can get these openings out there and start hiring people, because the earlier the better. And then people are looking. They really are. They're out there seeing what's available. And so we need to find that out. And so people are being respectful to the district by letting us know. So we appreciate that.
Right, I will make the motion for the approval of the personnel report with supplement.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye. Now we're moving along. Item 8B, grow your own employee incentive program applicants.
So this was a program that you all approved earlier this fiscal year. This is where we have our classified staff who have not yet earned their bachelor's degree. We assist them in getting their bachelor's degree, then they owe us a certain number of years based on the years in the program. And so we've identified a couple applicants that we feel show a high probability of success, and we're excited about these. And so we want to really promote their continuing or starting their education in any way we can. So this would just be approving these 2 employees for the employee incentive program. Grow your own.
One of them is a 2018 CBHS grad.
I was gonna ask.
Stay here, stay home.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Any questions or comments regarding this? Anyone on the board? All right, it is an action item.
I will make the motion for the approval of applications for the employee incentive program for Cheryl Spark and David Gaiman.
Gaiman.
I'll second it. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Motion passes. Item 9A, results-based funding plan. Dr. Moody.
Madam President, members of the board, as a supplement shows, we were blessed, and we never know when this is going to come, I guess, but we were blessed by the state to receive some results-based funding money that is based on achievement of students, that is to say how they perform in state assessments in conjunction with free and reduced lunch and some demographic issues. And this year we were given $108,809.23. Take out my mortgage payment and we're done. And I am seeking approval, board approval for the spending of that money. Now, it is by statute only to be spent for enhancement, expansion, or replication of the school site actions that are already taking place to enhance student performance. And we can do that either by expanding our site or improving what we're doing at our site. And the majority of this money's supposed to be used for teachers, teacher salaries, hiring new teachers, professional development, and those things that help close the achievement gap for students. We have a variety of things that we at Del Rio want to do to promote continued achievement and better what we're doing on campus. And I just have a few of these, and I put descriptions there for you, but just a brief overview. We'd like to offer a performance-based stipend. This is based on student performance in individual grade levels and in individual departments across campus. And that would be $2,200 at the end of this year, $2,200 per teacher and $1,100 per paraprofessional based on student performance and paraprofessional attendance. We also, as you know, you guys approved social studies and science curriculum, which we now have, and that is fantastic. And we're looking forward to getting pallets of that at some point here in the near future on Thursday.
They were all counted by 6:30 on Thursday.
Outstanding. Put them in the back of my truck. Let's go.
And just for the record, 30 pallets of curriculum materials, and the order is not complete, it all hasn't come yet, is the size of a big yellow school bus. That's how big 30 pallets are.
You got a big
Yeah.
truck.
So I got a big truck. Never mind. I take it back. But we're going to use some of this money as we're incorporating and doing a lot more cross-curricular education in our classrooms between the science and social studies and reading, writing, and subsequently math. We'd like to spend some of this in that professional development realm for teachers to plan out and map the curriculum and how they're going to integrate it across the day. We also, as you're well aware, we have Friday School, which is offered to those students who we're trying to push to the next level and to better their performance. Right now, this last Friday School, we had 83 kids there, and it was a madhouse, bedlam, and awesome every single moment of it. And that's from 8 to 12, and we'd obviously like to be able to reward our staff for being there because that is a volunteer duty. And we also on our campus have 2 teachers who are paid for by this fund. And obviously we want to keep them on campus. We'd also, just a few additional things here. We'd like to use this for some subscriptions, especially in the title classes that we have, computer based curricular enhancement that some kids are using, especially those kids who are at different levels. Some high achieving students in the title that we're trying to move back into the regular ed classroom generally, and some of those lower students that we want to get back up to grade level. And then you need a computer to be able to do that. And while the district does a very good job of providing us with computers, we'd like to be able to increase our capacity to do that on our campus. So with all that said, obviously a few things are still outstanding. What computers are costing and what's available, what we need and what's aging out, and we're doing an inventory of that right now. Things like Friday School, that's going to be based on how many kids we feel need that. And if 12 kids are showing up, I don't need 12 teachers. And so that would be great. But, and then subsequently curriculum mapping, that's going to be dependent on, how quickly those sorts of things get done. And then obviously the stipend, anytime we get an opportunity to give our teachers a little bit extra, I think we should. So I'm asking obviously that you approve these items in conjunction with my mortgage payment. Again, just kidding.
Or buy a bigger truck.
Or buy a bigger truck, right? That's what I need. A forklift and a semi.
Well,
Any questions?
congratulations. That's awesome. I always love when
Thank
we
you.
get to hear. I
It's
know
totally
that
on my staff.
if Territorial was in the running, we'd be celebrating them too, but they can't be, so Congratulations to you.
Right.
And,
It's not me at all. It's totally my
Well, then-
teachers in Paris.
Del Rio, so,
Awesome staff, that is for sure. Any comments, questions over here?
I am curious, how many years in a row have we received money like this?
3 or 4.
This is the
Yeah,
fourth.
I think this is the fourth.
Yeah.
That's
And
awesome.
has it been varying in amount or,
Pretty close to the same.
yeah?
It varies because it's based on the number of students who are eligible for free and reduced lunch. That's what makes it change.
Right, the demographic aspect of it.
60,000 a year. ballpark.
That's great. Anything
Well,
on this
it's-
side?
nope, I will go ahead and make the motion to approve the Del Rio school results-based funding plan.
A second. Fantastic. Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Item 9B, approval of CDHS 2023-2024 course description. Ms. Holmes.
Good evening, Madam President and governing board members. So this is our 23-24 course description. Overall, anything in yellow has been added or changed, and red will be deleted. I'm just gonna take you to some of the more important items. So on page 4, we've gone ahead and been given more detail into the CVH Honors Academy program. And then we went ahead and changed our college classes, our concurrent enrollment to include sophomores. It was previously, students had to be juniors, but we went ahead and reduced it to sophomores because we do have some students with approval of the counseling department and a minimum GPA of 3.0. Some of our students want to start early to pursue their AJET classes, so we are supportive of that. Then on page 11, we went ahead and the change of our YC English class. Instead of having a sports and literature, we're going to have major issues in world literature. And that's also on page 28 because we also have our items in English and also on our dual enrollment courses. So they're in 2 sections. Also on page 13, we went ahead and changed our Ag Year 1. It was so that automatically be enrolled in Year 2. We don't do that anymore because we find it very unsuccessful for the student if they're not having that buy-in. And that's also, that same change will be under the CTE section. But under Ag Year 2, at that one, we automatically enroll them in the 3rd year because they've made that 2-year commitment. Yeah. On page 17, because we have a new art teacher, that she went ahead and gave more detail into the art classes, Art 1, Art 2, and then on page 18, art portfolio and ceramics.
And just as a quick note, you just approved, hopefully you recognize that you approved an increase in the art fee. So as part of the consent agenda, there was an increase in the art fee. That's why there's 2 numbers there.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and change it to
Yeah.
25, so thank you.
Yeah.
We still are very reasonable on I checked on the 2 neighboring districts. They start at 30 and they go all the way up to 80.
Wow.
So
That's
we are
primarily for
making
supplies.
sure that our kids can pursue their interest in art, and so we're excited about that. And then on page 20, we're going to be removing interscholastic sports next year. We're finding that our coaches, for the most part, are after school. And it's hard with the students when the season ends, then they want to leave. Changing schedules is a nightmare, trying to keep everything balanced. So that is a change. And then on page, that's also been talked about, on page 24, we're still holding out that maybe we can add another CTE program, but for right now, we're going to take out drafting design. And because a lot of our students didn't understand what's, and that's on page 24 and 25, I'm sorry, cybersecurity, we just called it computer network technology, cybersecurity, to be more clear to our students. And then on page 26, our business classes, again, it's all going to be up to whether we can find teachers to go ahead and teach those subjects. On page 32, we just gave more detail to our office counselor, library, or cafeteria aide, or student aides, so that we know that they can be in one of 4 areas. It just used to say student aides. And then work study, we went ahead and we're gonna have them sign a contract because we're finding that students aren't getting their hours, and then as far as showing proof of employment before they even start in work study, and then turning in their timesheets to us. And that is it.
Great.
Just one quick question, and it's with a disappointment look on my face. I'm presuming because the deletion of all the references to drafting, that you've not been able to find a permanent drafting instructor? How sad.
It is, it makes me sad.
Yeah.
But we're
Okay.
still looking.
Mhm.
Mr. Prada and I are still not giving up, but we're, it's just difficult to find somebody that wants to come in that has that background.
Great. Any other comments or questions for Ms. Wolf? This also is an action item.
I will make the motion for the approval of the 2023-2024 CVHS course description.
I will second. Motion in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, item 9C, Safe Dates Curriculum. Ms. Daniels.
Okey dokey. I'd like to offer a moment of silence for Miss Wolf, who has to go to the Valentine Day dance for the next 2 hours.
Mr. Prada too.
And Mr. Parade. We're all, as we drive away, we'll be thinking of you.
I watched the video, there's not very many people around.
Okay, it's over at 9.
It's over and I'm like, oh, bless you people. So as you know, way back, several months ago, we approved the Safe Dates curriculum. The health department provides the instructors and the content. There were 2 little pieces that they forgot to include when you guys reviewed it, so we opened it back up again. It's been sitting out on the counter for 60 days. Here's a big stack, Miss Bryce, it's all yours at the end of the board meeting. And this time, no one came to look at it at all. So just wanted to let you know that. So our 60 days are more than up, and we're asking for approval of the 2 little supplemental pieces that deal with safe dates that are focused on communication and respectful relationships.
Oh, fantastic.
Okay.
Any questions on this? I think we've already talked about it before.
I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve the safe date supplement curricular materials.
Second,
Yes.
All over the place.
everyone. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Item 10A is information only, first reading of some policies.
There's actually going to be 2 policies and a regulation. We're going to start with Larry, who will discuss GCCA, and then I'll talk about EBB and EBB-R.
It does say your name, Larry. I
Does?
Hey,
apologize.
Larry.
But just so you know, I was not a half-sex kindergartner.
Probably not.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. So before you, hopefully you see a proposed revision to policy GCCA, which is in reference to our differentiated leave. This was an item that came out of SEAC. I know it was mentioned earlier before, was voted on. Basically, in a nutshell, it's just reducing the maximum number of leave hours that an employee can bill to from 960 to 480. We felt that 960 was kind of a lofty number to hit before an employee could potentially see a monetary value come out of their leave if they were an individual that never took any time off. Because as you read through the policy, the only times you ever see anything, a payout, if you will, for unused leave hours is
when you leave the district or you max that. With 960 hours, that is 12 years as a 10-month employee. I've never taken an hour of time off, or 10 years as a 12-month employee. So at least that reduces that by half. Also, along with that, with our recent change to the leave bank, which in essence could double your leave value in a family medical leave emergency, reducing that by half still covers you if you are if you participate in the leave bank a couple times. So with 480 hours being the most you could do with 12 weeks for a family medical leave back. So that was kind of our thought there. I know there's some other items we'd like to bring, but as John constantly tells me, we have to kind of keep chipping away at some of these items in regards to leave. So this is the one we wanted to bring forth for you guys to review.
The other thing I want to mention is that we have, how many,
25 to 30
people that are over 480 right now. A few of those, a handful, and there's at least one in the room, is actually at 960. Yeah, I didn't name names, but anyway, we would not pay them down all the way to 480. That would be over $100,000. That was not necessarily achievable. So what we would do is they would, let's say I'm at 600 hours. In July, I'd get 96 hours. That's my leave as a 12-month employee. The 10-month employees would get 80, but I get 96. I'd pay, the district would pay down that 96. I'd still be at 600, but any I used throughout the year would chip away at that 600. And then say I used 5 days, I'm now at 550 next year, I get 96, I pay out 96 and I use them, then I start chipping that down to where it would be 480. So, so it would not, we would not pay out people that are existing above 480, but those that are at 480 would get paid out
in July.
In
So
July.
these are like our 5-star employees that don't miss any days.
Well, like you said, it was, yeah, it would take 5 years without using any leave to even get to that point.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
If you're 12 months, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, not even a sick day.
You know, I worked, you know, and before I was sick, I had worked 24 years and I was only at 700 hours, give or take.
This is personal time, this is sick time, it's all considered undifferentiated leave,
Right.
so.
And then for us 12-month employees, if you don't use your vacation, it will roll over to undifferentiated leave as well. So that's another source of that leave.
So
So Larry, you have some time,
I've got
paid
lots.
time off. Where are you gonna go?
I got vacation for that.
There's restrictions on how you use it also. You can only use, unless it's sick leave, you can only use 2 personal days a month.
Okay.
Any questions?
So I'll move on to EBB.
Thank you.
This is so we have a teacher at the middle school, Mr. Lynch, that would like to start a unmanned aerial vehicle club, which is UAV is basically a drone in this case. But this policy would also basically anything that flies in the air. It could be balloons, could be model rockets, anything that's in the air. And so he asked that we put together a policy. And so I found the policy that's included is on the Mesa Unified School District website. And it's interesting because Mesa is one of the only districts that does not use ASBA for their policy services. They have an on-staff attorney and their on-staff attorney does their policies. But anyway, so the policy is very simple. It says the superintendent's going to provide guidelines or develop guidelines. That's what the policy says. And then the regulation is actually the guidelines. Things like approval from the principal, a license, to operate the vehicle. There has to be a teacher there or an operator that's supervising. And if there's students there, that has to be supervised by a teacher or whatever. And this wouldn't just apply to district staff. We have a member of the Yavapai College staff, the instructor for their UAV program that comes over and flies usually in the summer over all our facility, all our solar panels. And we can tell which ones are out by the infrared camera that they have on their drone. But this would apply for that. Anyone flying a drone on campus would have to follow these rules.
And legally can only apply to our property,
Correct.
Yeah.
Just a district property.
Okay.
because the FAA has their own rules.
Well, we're still subject to the FAA. And so there are two types of licenses, and I know Mr. Lynch has one. And then we're working with the trust to make sure that we don't need the other one because it's much more, it's much more involved to get that second license. And so we're working with our insurance company to make sure that Mr. Lynch's license is appropriate for what we want to do.
All right, this is just a discussion and information. Any other discussion? All right, item 10B, this is the second reading of policies. We had our first reading last month.
These are basically results of state laws that have changed. Some of them are exhibits, which are the EA or EB or just E. I know there was changes to foster care federal law that necessitated some of this. And I looking at Mrs. Daniels because she's our foster care coordinator or contact or the liaison. There you go.
Tomorrow I have more training.
So she is that. So, and then, so these are basically, most of these are exhibits, which are forms.
All right,
So I'm assuming I'm just gonna read this, but am I reading all of these? Can I read them all at one time?
We don't have to vote for
Oh, we
each one. You
don't?
can vote as a group if you want to
Say
just,
we approve,
well, I think you want to just read as what it says there. One motion
just the approval of the second reading of revised policies.
and then the policy, the designation. if
policy
we did.
numbers.
Okay, and then the exhibits.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll make a motion for the approval of second reading of the revised policies, exhibit IHAMB-EA, exhibit IHAMB-EB, exhibit IJL-E, policy JFABDA, regulation JFABDA, exhibit JHD-EB, exhibit KB-EC.
All right, motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good night. See you on March 8th,
Welcome
Which
to.
is a Wednesday.
which is a Wednesday,
Wednesday, March 8th.
which is the second Wednesday